Welcome to the Milk and Honey with Lemon podcast. I'm your host, Lemon Price, creator of the Holy Girl Habits, wife and mama, and certified life and leadership coach who turned away from corporate life to embrace kingdom leadership. This podcast is for Christian women feeling the weight of their divine callings, grappling with doubts of their leadership abilities, and searching tirelessly for biblically grounded guidance who want to step confidently into their roles as radiant kingdom leaders. Inside, we're going to traverse from those feelings of uncertainty and overwhelming searches, moving toward firm biblical leadership, empowering you to steward your gifts, and showing you that you indeed have what it takes. So, sister, grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive in together. Hey friend, welcome to Milk and Honey with Lemon. The Bible says in Numbers 14:8, and if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. On this podcast, we talk about stepping into that overflow that God has for us by becoming those ultimate Proverbs 31 women. Hey, I'm Lemon. I am just like you, sister friend. I knew God had something more in store for me, but I couldn't see a way out of the laundry piles. And frankly, I resented that Proverbs 31 woman. How was I going to live up to the hype? That is until I found out how to really step into becoming this Proverbs 31 woman through leadership development. In this podcast, you're going to find financial freedom, leadership growth, and motivation so you'll be able to do all the things God has called you to do with ease and really step into that land of milk and honey. Welcome back to the Milk and Honey podcast. I'm your host, Lemon Price, and I'm excited to be here. So first and foremost, I'm going to tell you that if I sound funny, it's because I have pneumonia. I'm not contagious, I promise. So if anybody from Kingdom Alliance is listening and you're like, oh my gosh, Lemon, I'm literally going to see you in a couple of days. Don't worry, I'm not contagious. It's just an ongoing cough that I have for a minute. So just bear with me. But I felt like this was really important because I don't know. I've had a weird couple of weeks in like a good way, in like a really beautiful, good way. So I want to talk about obedience and I want to talk about this hurricane that just hit my area. So if you guys are not from the United States or haven't seen the news, we had a massive hurricane hit Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and nobody in our area was necessarily prepared for this hurricane. The hurricane was supposed to, originally, it was supposed to turn in the Gulf and, it wasn't supposed to hit our area. It was supposed to hit more North Georgia, not South Georgia. And it was supposed to be a category 1. Like we were preparing for a tropical storm and ended up being a category 4. Big storm. It sounded like a tornado blowing through our house. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. Thank God, we had very minimal damage to our home. We got power back on Sunday. They told us it wouldn't be until the 3rd of October, and we got it back on Sunday. Thank God for that. But I want to talk about this house, this hurricane, and obedience. And I know it probably sounds like really crazy. And I really want to be sensitive too, because I understand that we got very lucky. And I'm going to talk about that too. But I recognize we have friends who live in Western North Carolina who are devastated right now. I have friends who have lost everything. And Glenn and I know a lot of people who have lost a lot in this storm. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm being insensitive toward that. But I also have a responsibility to give God the glory in the situation that he just brought us through. So let me backtrack this story because this story is like a year in the making. So last summer, Glenn and I we were traveling. We're beach people, but we also really love the mountains. And so we contemplated buying a house up in the mountains, got a pre-approval. We were literally up there for just like a weekend getaway when our pre-approval came in. And I was literally sitting poolside up at the mountains and got this pre-approval letter. And that was, summer of 2023. So we looked at a couple houses. We found one that we were like, this house is fine. It's, it's big enough. It had a beautiful mountain view. When you stepped out onto the porch, you could directly see the mountains. It was beautiful. And so we were ready to put an offer in. We were on the phone. Something in both of our spirit was like, this isn't the house. Do not do this. So we still had this pre-approval letter and we couldn't find anything that we were in love with. So we let our pre-approval letter expire. We kept looking, and I'm just not seeing something for me. Summer rolls around again, which is the best time to buy, right? If you're a parent, like you want to move during the summer so that way you're not disrupting school. And end of summer rolls around, and in Georgia, kids go back to school August 1st. It was like mid-July, and Glenn and I were talking about it. We're like, okay, if it's too late for us to buy a house now, like, why don't we just wait until January and February? Rates are going to go down anyway. Let's just wait till January or February, and then we'll go. There should be more on the market, all those kind of things. And we were both in agreement. Like, we were good. We were fine. And then the last Friday in July, I wake up and I'm like, I'm supposed to text our mortgage lender this morning. And he was like, okay. He was like, the kids literally go back to school on Tuesday. I'm like, I know, but I'm supposed to text our mortgage lender today. And he was like, okay. So I text her, shout out to Ivy, text her at 7:30 in the morning on a Friday. And I was like, how do you feel about us buying a house again right now? And she was like, okay, just send me updated pay stubs and tax return, whatever, all the things you have to do to buy a house. And so I sent them over. And a couple hours later, she is, okay, like how much you guys want to spend on a house? And I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't even looked. I actually have no idea. Let's like check out the area. Glenn works near Savannah. We go to church near Savannah. And so we were driving like 45 minutes to an hour every day to work in church. And I was like, this is crazy. So I'm like, we want to be closer. We don't want an HOA. Like there's certain things we wanted. I personally wanted to be on the ocean, but that just did not happen for me, which is fine. And so anyway, we were like, let's just, start perusing. And so we start looking and find something that we're like, we settled on like a radius. And so we text our real estate agent. And this is how you know we live in a small town. Our real estate agent was also the kid's bus driver. And that's a whole other story about just what a blessing that man is. So we text him, we're like, hey, we're like good to go. Ivy emailed our pre-approval, and I like our mortgage lender that we use because they're like a small local thing and they don't farm out your loan after you close. They do all of their underwriting up front. So like between Friday and like Monday, we had gone through all of underwriting. Like it was done. Everything was like good to go. So like minus like inspection and stuff like that, like our loan documents were done. We talked to a real estate agent and we found a couple things. There was only 2 houses that we were actually like interested in looking at, both in great areas, fantastic schools, the whole kit and caboodle. And that was the other thing too. We're like, okay, this is like a little bit stressful because school's already started now. Like school started. So if we're gonna make this move, like we have to do it like right now. And so we found a house. The first house we saw, I know it sounds so crazy. Of course, we didn't tell them that we loved this house, but we went and looked at the other one and hated it. It was awful. I hated it. Everything about it I hated. We sat in the second house that we saw and mapped out what our offer was going to be, called this agent, said we were putting in a verbal, whatever. So that was on a Wednesday. Thursday, we signed the official like offer letter. And that was at 9 a.m. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, our real estate agent had called and said, congratulations, you guys are, they accepted. And so by Friday morning, we were under contract and then we closed 3 weeks later, which is completely unheard of. If anybody has ever used one of these, like Glenn was in the military, so we used a VA loan, and usually there's a lot of requirements. There's a lot of things that kind of have to happen. They're really picky about certain things on the house and the inspection and all those kind of things. Most VA loans, it's more like 45 to 60 days that you're closing on. And the seller, and I know her because we live in a small town, she didn't want to work with anybody who had a VA loan or like a USDA or anything like that. And because we had done underwriting up front and all these beautiful things, she was like, okay, I'm actually fine with it because I know this loan is going to fund. And so we were like, okay, great. So we ended up closing within 3 weeks. It was so fast. We weren't supposed to close until after Labor Day, and things just kept getting moved, which was great for us. We had a bunch of people here for the actual Labor Day. It was wonderful. And so you're like, okay, what does that have to do with obedience and this hurricane and all of those things? We have now it's only been a month, right? Labor Day weekend was only a month ago, and we have not been here that long. And so this hurricane hit, and it was a devastating hurricane, absolutely devastating. We lost power, like I said, like for days we had no power and everything. And so thankfully, like we have a pickup truck and cell service was down. We have Verizon, and I'm sure a lot of you last week remember Verizon was down nationally, but Verizon was down for us days before it was down for everybody else. There was no cell phone reception either in our area. So we were like, okay, we are going to drive around and check on our friends. And so we did. We were able to drive around, check on a lot of people, make sure people were okay. And we drove by our old house. And so thankfully, nobody had moved into our old house. Our landlord hadn't even been over there yet. We drove by to check on them and check on our old neighbors. And the devastation that I saw, I was in complete tears. It was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen. Our house that we lived in, a tree landed on the roof and one went through a couple of windows. If we'd still been there, we would have lost everything. The house is completely uninhabitable now. We wouldn't have a home. Our neighbor on the other side, thankfully, they had already moved out and they actually only lived like next door. They ended up buying a house next door to where they were living. And nobody had moved into their old house either. A tree went and split their house in half. It landed on the roof and just completely went through the dead center of this house. Our neighbors on the other side of us, thankfully, they had left in time, but a tree took off a whole bedroom of the house. And so one whole side of the house was gone. And Glenn and I were looking at where we parked our vehicles and everything, like trees were down and like 150-year-old oaks were down where our cars would have been. We would have lost our house. We would have lost our vehicles. One neighbor lost their home. The other two neighbors we have in that neighborhood, there was damage, but it was livable. When Glenn and I left, it was so hard to watch. The amount of tears I shed and just the gratitude I had for God. There was such protection. And I was talking to my friend Debbie. She's been on the podcast. And we were just talking about it. I'm like, because it didn't make sense for me to text my mortgage lender when I did. It just didn't. Glenn and I were not prepared to buy. Like, we were not. I mean, we had done, like we were okay, but we weren't planning on doing that until January or February, with the idea that if we bought something in February, we'd probably close like March or April. And then the kids get out of school in May. So we were like, we can make this slow move and all these things. Like that was like our earthly plan. As a unit, that was our plan. And then very obviously it was God telling me to reach out to that mortgage lender. And everything moved so fast. The attorney, when we closed, because you need an attorney to close here in Georgia, and all three real estate agents, because the seller had two, it was a team, all three of them said they've never seen a home close this fast with a VA loan. That a lot of the times they get pushed back because something doesn't meet this regulation and there's like all kinds of things. We were just so insanely fortunate. And looking around, I'm like, oh my gosh, like God really spared us from this situation. And so it's not just, this is my encouragement. This is not to come in here and brag about what God has done, but it's like twofold when I think about this situation. First of all, I had to be in tune with the Spirit. Like I had to know that it was God telling me to reach out to that mortgage lender, because it did not make logical sense for me to do that. None of that made sense. I'll tell you too, it's the funniest thing, it's always, okay, you're, conditionally approved. And of course I'm so nervous, I like didn't sleep when they said that. And they were like, oh, it's a conditional approval. And they were like, we'll call you the next day. I didn't sleep. I was so nervous. I'm like, I don't know. What if there's some weird secret debt I don't know about? Or I don't know, who knows? And she called to verify that Glenn is a junior and not Glenn senior. That was it. She was like, I just need to confirm that he's a junior, not a senior. And like the house that his parents own in Texas is not his house. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That was it. It was so fast. And you could tell the Lord was really on it. And I'm sitting here thinking about this. I had to be in tune with the Spirit. I didn't know that it was God. But then I had to respond even though it didn't make any sense. Moving did not make any sense for us. And we moved so quick, like, it wasn't weird for the kids to start new school. They're in a better situation. They're happy. They have friends. Like, they're hanging out with their buddies all the time. They're so much happier. Academically, they're doing better at the school, which is crazy because it's only been a month. But I say all that to say we really have been so fortunate. And that's my encouragement for you. Like, I need you to be so in tune with the Spirit. I need you to know it's God, but then respond. Respond even when it doesn't make sense. Respond when you're like, there's no way this could work out unless it's the Lord. I need you to respond because I was sitting here and I was looking at this house that was destroyed. I've never even thought to get renter's insurance, which is probably bad, obviously. So if you're renting, get renter's insurance. I didn't. So Glenn and I literally would have lost everything. We would have absolutely nothing and we would have no home to go to if I hadn't responded, if I hadn't texted the lender, if I didn't have all of my ducks in a row, if I wasn't organized and had the documents that the mortgage lender needed and all those things, then we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. And so that's my encouragement for you is to listen and respond because my obedience is the reason my family is safe. My obedience is the reason like we're okay and we have a roof over our head and our home is safe. If I had blown it off, if I had thought to myself, you know what, that's crazy, I'm not doing that, we would have lost everything. Is to not only listen to the Lord, but then respond the way that He's asking you to respond. Even when it doesn't make sense, I want to encourage you to respond to what He has for you. Because all I could tell you from this experience is the Lord really does go before us and He knows what's best for us. The Lord really is looking out for you specifically, and He knows exactly what you need if you are willing and able to listen to what He has for you. Again, I'm just praying for everybody who still doesn't have power and have the resources, the people who've lost loved ones. I'm praying for them. But also, I have to give so much glory and gratitude back to the Lord because of my ability to respond. And this is not because I did it out of my own strength, but because I was willing to be humble enough to hear and then obey Him. And now I have this story to share. And now I can tell you, like, I don't think I will ever be, I can't say that I'll ever be in a place where I'm like, is that really God? Is that Him? Like where I'm like questioning, but I'll tell you, I will respond a lot faster. I promise I will respond a lot faster. And that's just the encouragement that I have for you this week is to listen and respond, even when it doesn't make sense, my friend. So that's it. That's what I have for you. Be ready because the next couple weeks are going to be jam-packed. I'm leaving for California on Thursday. And you want to come to San Diego, shoot me a message on Instagram because I'm having a party for the book launch. Yeah, you're welcome to come and I would love to meet you in person. So if you're in the area, shoot me a message. I'll send you the details. There's a lot of like really exciting announcements and speakers and fun things that I have planned for the podcast for the rest of the year. This is the last kind of like very chill week that I have for the rest of the year, but I'm so excited. I'm so grateful. And I just want to encourage you, listen and then respond. So if there's something the Lord is asking you to do and you're like, this doesn't make sense, I want to encourage you to go do it this week. Finish the episode, leave a review on Apple if you haven't done that already, and then go and do it. Go and respond with your whole heart and give God your yes, like your full yes, a full trust that He is going before you and that He is doing things and He is prompting you because it's in your best interest. And I promise He will glorify Himself in that process when you listen and respond. So I love you and I will see you all next week. Bye, friend.
Hey friend, what a joy it has been to share today's journey with you. If you found a spark of inspiration or a nugget of wisdom that resonated, would you bless someone else by sharing this episode with them? It could be the encouragement they need to step into their purpose and calling. Also, if you could spare a moment to leave a review, it would mean the world to me. I really appreciate your feedback and it really helps our community grow. Remember, the road to discovering God's call for you isn't one you have to walk alone. So join me again next Monday for another episode where we'll continue to explore the depths of leadership and the heights of our heavenly calling. Until then, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep trusting in His plan. God bless you, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye, friend. Thank you so much for listening to the Milk and Honey with Lemon podcast. I am so grateful you were here. I hope this episode has helped you move from feelings of doubt and uncertainty towards stepping confidently into your God-given leadership role, fully equipped with biblical wisdom. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to reach and inspire more Christian women leaders just like you. Don't forget to share your takeaways, post it on Instagram, tag me anywhere you're on social media, and I'll see you next week.